It is a composite thought experiment combining the different sedimentary layers around the world that have striking similarities. They are all combined in one thought experiment, and it is alleged because of unscientific starting points called uniformitarianism that the geological column represents eons of time. But the point is, this is just simply an ideological imposition. Okay? Do you know who came up with the foundational idea that the way to understand sedimentary depositions uh, they will be interpreted as deep time? It was Charles Lyell in the middle of the 19th century, the father of modern geology. He came up with an ideological filter called uniformitarianism, which is with us still today. That the key to the past is the present. That when we look at sedimentary deposits, we will not interpret it as being the product of a massive catastrophe and being laid down very quickly by large amounts of water deposits, but that this happens slowly over long periods of time. He never showed that was true. He just offered it as a scientific explanation, in opposition to the previously held position of what is called catastrophism.
I got a
Right?
complete different answer yesterday. I think John Steele told me that the Earth was submerged for 180 days, and there's actually proof that it was flood. I keep getting different answers from a bunch of different Christians. I don't know, but okay, you're not really
Yeah.
answering my question though. You're just like
Okay. All right,
explaining it.
dude.
But
I'm
we
done
can move
talking.
past it because you're not gonna like.
Goodbye. You're done.
Okay, well, God.
Isn't this amazing how arrogant this 20-year-old is? He didn't even know the concept of the term of the geological column. And yet he still continues thinking he's going to educate me, and somebody who I'm three times his age.
Yeah, a lot of these people that request stuff, they just want to give us like a lecture.
See, the thing is, they're like Muslims. They cannot bring themselves to believe that the prevailing, you got to there's something wrong with your mic, Fenton. You're going to get kicked if you don't fix your mic.
Sorry, is it good now?
Yeah. Okay, so just hold on a second. So our previous guest is just an uneducated, ignorant 20-year-old, all right? And I don't say he's ignorant because he disagrees. He's clearly ignorant. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He is the people like him are like Muslims. They cannot bring themselves to believe that the high priests of science, who tell them that the earth and the universe is old, that this pervasive idea held in consensus couldn't possibly be wrong, right? Because we put a man on the moon. You know, this is the result of very poor education in the philosophy of science, right? And therefore, they think anything that comes under the banner of science and declared by scientists is true. Okay, science has a long history of corpses of beliefs that were previously held pervasively and in consensus that were later abandoned. So the fact that a concept or a model of science is held pervasively, and as I said, in consensus, is not a guarantee that the model is true, right? But they can't bring themselves to believe that all these scientists this day could be wrong on these issues. I mean, they're just so gullible, when it comes to evolution and the Big Bang. Anyway, go ahead, Fenton.
Yeah, okay. A couple things, I guess, are just about that. So the thing with science is that, like, yeah, sometimes
How old are you? How old are you?
I'm 28.
Okay. Don't think you're going to be educating me on science. I'm 63.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just, obviously you would probably know that.
I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't want you to waste your time or my time thinking that you're going to give me a mini community college lecture about the nature of science. Is there some point that you'd like to give to us, or a position that you would like to lay down?
I was just going to continue on that one, but
I don't want you to continue. I don't need a lecture on science.
No, that's fine. We can skip that. The reason why I joined is because I don't believe in Christianity based on space, for instance, right? So
Whoa. I
Yeah.
didn't understand what you just said. Go back 2 sentences and say it slower.
Yeah, that's because I wasn't done and you cut me
No,
off.
you're
So
not speaking. You're not articulating yourself clearly.
okay. Let me start again then. So in the Bible, how old does the Bible, the people who wrote it, whoever, I don't really care, how old do they believe the Earth is?
Okay. Before I answer the question,
You're good.
you should be informed to know that when it comes to TikTok, I am among the better people who can defend young Earth creationism. Okay? So you're not dealing with a noob here or some country bumpkin. Okay? So
Yeah, I get you.
if you hold to a biblical model based upon the biblical genealogies, you're talking about a young Earth in terms of thousands of years, anywhere around 6 or 7,000 at the outermost 10,000 years from a biblical perspective.
Yep. Okay, cool. 10. Let's go with the wide one. Let's say worst case scenario, it's 10,000. That's the oldest. So
It doesn't matter.
yeah, it doesn't really matter, right? So then why
Can
do
you
we have?
please listen to me? If you
Yeah.
don't get to your point soon, I'm going to remove you.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So I.
No, I don't
Okay.
want you.
So,
I don't want you. Listen to me.
yeah.
You're too old of a young man to sit there and be babbling to me like a 16-year-old. Get to the point.
Okay, so first, stop cutting me off. Second,
Goodbye.
why is there light coming from millions of years away?
Goodbye.
Okay.
So here we have, what did he say he was, 27, 28? Right? And he's babbling like a 60-year-old, educating a 63-year-old man like he's talking to a fifth grader. Okay? I always love it when they're trying to educate me on science. I always love that. Um, if he hadn't been so arrogant, I would have left him up on stage. But he just wouldn't stop babbling without being substantive and getting to the point. And I warned him multiple times. Look, I'll give you one more chance, but you're going to have to stop babbling and rambling and thinking that you're educating me on something like I'm a fifth grader. Remember, I'm double your age. So get to the point, or else I'm going to drop you without further warning.
Okay, why do we have light coming to us from millions of years away? Millions of light years it's traveled.
Okay. Have you ever heard the expression getting the rug pulled out from underneath you?
Oh, I'm keen to hear this. Continue.
Have you ever, look, dude, I'm not messing around, okay? Have you ever heard that expression?
Yep.
Okay, that's about to happen to you, okay?
Okay.
Now, how fast does light travel in a one-way direction?
It's something like 300,000 kilometers a second.
Really? And who measured light in a one-way direction?
Who measured light in a one-way direction?
Yeah,
I'll have to get up some G.
Okay, so listen carefully. Is light measured round trip, or is light measured in a one-way direction?
I can be measured in a one-way direction.
No, you are completely ignorant. Okay, light cannot be measured in a one-way direction. That's impossible.
Okay.
Did you know that?
Yeah. Okay. That's even fine.
Okay. So were you ignorant that that light can be measured in a one-way direction? Were you wrong about that?
Yeah. I'll eat that. I'll eat that for
good.
sure.
So let me ask you this question: Is the speed of a photon restricted by itself, or its environment in terms of maybe what results in the rate of causation?
Probably the rate of causation, but
Okay. So is there a difference in the rate of causation in one location in the universe versus another?
yeah, but
Okay.
space.
So here's the problem. Okay, is the if the rate of causation, right? Have you ever heard of relativity and special relativity?
Yeah.
Okay. Suppose somebody was traveling at the speed of light in a spaceship, theoretically speaking, right?
Yep.
Right? They could travel a certain distance and then turn around and come back. They would have only have aged a very short period of time from their perspective.
Yep.
But when they came back to Earth, it would be millions of years later.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
You're on point.
So does the rate of causation for objects change depending on your locale in the universe?
Yeah, it does. Yep.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Okay. So then claiming that it takes millions of years for the light to get to us is not necessarily true. Have you ever heard of the asynchronous model of the speed of light?
No. I'll look that up
What
when
it
you
means,
explain it.
what it means is that the speed of light could be instantaneous going out, but upon round trip, it could be 600,000 kilometers per second.
Okay.
So when you say that it takes light millions of years to get here, that's not something that can be tested.
So if you look in a straight line and the light's coming to you, and you look somewhere else in a straight line.
Are you listening to me?
Yeah.
Can you test the speed of light in a one-way direction? The answer is no. Can light theoretically be instantaneous or near instantaneous in a one-way direction, but 600,000 kilometers round trip?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
Okay. So right there. So if it's the case, or for that matter, if you go to Verisitanium, which is a YouTube channel on science, he says that the speed of light is not governed by itself, but by the rate of causation in its environment. So right then and there, if that's true, or the asynchronous model of the speed of light is true, then that totally destroys your notion that it takes millions of years for light to get to us from distant stars.
Well, kind of, but also not quite. So let's say something's going on. Hang on.
a second.
Can I have my point?
Goodbye.
Oh, I let you speak. Let me speak.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You let me speak. Right. Notice how everything I say to him. Notice everything I say to them, they just ignore, and then they just babble on.
He was ignoring you and waiting for a turn to speak. That's all he was doing.
Yeah, and he did so repeatedly. That's why I had enough of him. Okay? This is how naive these people are. Well, the scientists say it takes light millions of years to get to us. Oh, well, then it must be true. Because a scientist said it. It's not like scientists haven't been wrong before.
The book I'm reading says the problem with science is they don't. Science isn't inherently bad, but we must, when we do science, give glory to God when we do science. If we don't give glory to God when we do science, then it's going to be used for control people.
See, here's the problem. These young skulls full of mush, and those who are even older, they've never exposed themselves to rigorous or robust scientific cases of refutation of this that are in a minority position. They don't even know of the existence of the minority scientific opposition because they've never been told. Okay?
Can science tell us that Schmurder is wrong, or can science tell us that we should believe the results of the experiment? There's lots of things science is ill-equipped.
Look, if it's the case, right? So, like for example, only until a couple years ago was it agreed upon by many scientists that there was something called the Higgs field, and that the Higgs field provides for the ability for quantum energy to become particles. It could be the case at a subatomic level, or even with the nature of space itself within close proximity to objects of large mass, that there could be something that inhibits or impedes the speed of light. But then when photons are unrestricted by an inhibiting surrounding situation, the speed of light could be unimaginably faster than what we imagine it to be. So the synchronous view of the speed of light, that the speed of light is the same speed in both directions, is not something that is provable. Okay, and these people don't understand this, right? Oh no! Dun dun dun! Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie the Smirker is here.
Darth, I got to pick your brain on something.
As long as you don't pick my nose.
Okay. Do you think that, I think we've talked about this a touch before, but do you think that an infinite regress, appealing to an infinite regress for the birth of the universe, actually it's kind of a paradox, but do you think that can be an escape hatch for atheists?
Everything they say that is inconsistent with what God has revealed about the beginning is an escape hatch and is a figment of their imagination.
Yeah. I just find that one particularly annoying. That there's something.
I think it's funny that they have a criterion of belief about origin, and they say prove it, right?
Yeah.
And yet they will adopt alternate cosmological models other than the creationist model, and they will shove it in our faces without the least bit attempt to give an argument or an establishment that it's true or
Amen.
proving it. Okay?
Yeah.
And you see, this just goes to show you their double standard.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Okay, Romans 1 says they are without an excuse, right? They do not want to acknowledge God as their creator when the world clearly exemplifies ultimate design and intentionality. So what they do is they use a figment of their imagination to come up with an alternate explanation because they don't want to accept the obvious, okay? And then when they come up with an alternate explanation in order to evade what is clear and obvious that the world exemplifies ultimate design and intentionality by the purpose of God, they then claim, because they've adopted a figment of their imagination, that the obvious is no longer obvious. Well, based upon what? And then you know what they'll say? They'll go, "'Cause you didn't prove it."
See,
yeah, go ahead.
when we drop like a pencil, we know it's gonna fall to the ground. And it's as if they were to say, like, well, hypothetically, it could fall straight up into the air. But like a hypothetical isn't like defeat what we have evidence for, right?
Yeah. Charlie, what you need to understand is our current situation is the product of a historical development, not because we have super genius scientists who discovered certain things, such as the Big Bang. Okay, so what we have is in the latter part of the 18th century, okay, in the 1700s, there was a man by the name of James Hutton, and he made a radical proposal that the geological and topographical features of the Earth, all around the Earth, should not be interpreted as the result of a massive catastrophe of biblical proportions, but rather it's to be interpreted by slow-moving processes over eons of time. And in his position,
Darth?
Hutton was at the end of the 18th century, and I believe slightly over into the 19th.
Okay.
The 19th century was when you had, the Civil War, which was in the 1860s. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So the Civil War was in the 19th century. So you're talking about the 1850s, 1860s, 70s, and so on.
Yeah, I know this. I know this.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm not trying to talk down to you.
No. Some people don't know. You got to.
Okay. All right. Okay. I didn't know. Okay. So if it sounds like I'm being condescending, I'm not.
No. I don't take it that way at all.
I run into a lot of people who don't know this stuff.
Sure.
So Hutton would have gone into obscurity had not his theory been resurrected and promulgated by the genius of Charles Lyell, who was a lawyer by training, but he had an avocation of geology, and he became the father of modern geology. He wrote a book called Principles of Geology. He wrote 3 volumes. In that book, he presented, without scientific demonstration, that we have to have a new ideological filter, which was called uniformitarianism. That the key to interpreting the past is through slow-moving processes that we see today. So that, for example, the various geological sedimentary deposits are not the result of a massive catastrophes or worldwide flood, but they are the result of depositions over millions, if not billions of years. Okay? Now, the
Darth,
world...
you got J-Mike in the chat here.
Okay, he is? Okay, let's get rid of him.
What's the support for P1?
Yeah, hey, J-Mike, when you act like an asshole, you behave like an asshole, and you engage in stalking and harassing, you lose the privilege of interacting with me. But you need to grow up. I like how you're so proud you're a co-host of the Atheist Experience. You know, that and $6.95 will get you a cheeseburger at McDonald's. Let's get rid of him. He's one of the rare people that is one of the biggest asshats I've ever come across on the internet.
I'll tell you what, Darth. You got that video of him and you on YouTube debating, the one where I think Tom Rabbit put it up there.
Yeah,
it was embarrassing. Like you annihilated him. It was pretty clear.
Well, I don't want to brag, but he has mental problems, so we're done with him.
His defensive tag is like, "What if I just don't know anything?"
Dude, that was sad. It was like, are you serious?
Okay, so you have to understand that following the Enlightenment was the abandoning of a biblical worldview and the exaltation of human autonomy and human reason. So by the time we got into the middle of the 19th century, more and more scientific minds decided that they were going to reject the biblical model of the world, and they were going to opt for a scientific one. Now, what you need to understand is what is meant by a scientific approach is what we call a positivist approach. In other words, we will only consider and promote those ideas that are purely materialistic or naturalistic, right? Now, adopting that ideology to interpret the past to the exclusion of, let's say, a book such as the Bible that claims to be divine providential revelation, right, is not something that's scientific for them to reject that. Okay?
Right.
So say they were called the positivists. Okay, there's a guy by the name of, I can't remember his name, is Comte, something like Comte, right? He had a big influence on Darwin and other scientists in his day. They were the forerunners of what we call today philosophical naturalism and methodological naturalism. We will only consider purely naturalistic, mechanistic, and materialistic explanations for things of the distant past that we cannot observe, test, or repeat. Okay, so it's an a priori rejection of a biblical model of reality without a justification that the biblical model is false. It's just simply dismissed because it doesn't come under the moniker of science. So they were called the positivists. Okay, these people, the positivists, had a big influence on the likes of people like Charles Lyell and especially Charles Darwin. Darwin himself became a positivist, right? So this idea was growing and spreading in the sciences because the success of scientific discoveries and advances was going to their head, okay? That because that we were figuring out more and more stuff, how it happens at unseen levels, Therefore, we have no need of any religious text or revelation from God. All we need is the authority of the human mind and positivism or purely mechanistic explanations. Okay? So, once this idea of uniformitarianism promulgated by Lyell spread like a cancer, then Charles Darwin now had the secret sauce that he needed. That how shall I put this? Without deep time, evolution dies on the vine, right? In order for his theory to work in his understanding of biology, he needed vast amounts of time. But what we know now from a molecular point of view, right, and this can be demonstrated scientifically and mathematically, that even if you have a trillion Earth-like planets, which nobody believes that is the case, even if you were given a trillion Earth-like planets where you had organic material mutating for 14 billion years, that wouldn't even begin to scratch the surface of mutations being able to build the linear coding sequences for a couple of proteins, let alone coding for the entire genome of the animal kingdom. Now, what I just said is so true that world-renowned evolutionary biologist Dr. Eugene Koonin, in his book The Logic of Chance, who is a staunch evolutionist and anti-creationist, said in his own highly technical book, Defending Evolution, that self-replicating systems, which he's referring to as evolution, in a one-off finite universe is virtually impossible to occur, but with a multiverse and many worlds in one, it's guaranteed.
Right.
Okay? So, you see, once the theory of evolution was snowballing in the scientific community because scientists were abandoning a Christian outlook or a biblical outlook increasingly, right? Not entirely, but increasingly, and it became a very intimidating factor. Once the theory of evolution was dogma throughout the scientific world, right? This idea of deep time followed with the rise of complexity arising out of chaos and non-complexity was extrapolated to the cosmos, to an evolutionary model of the cosmos, that the cosmos evolved over deep time. It wasn't a biological evolution, but it was a cosmological evolution where complexity, given enough time, will episodically occur in a large enough and old enough universe. Right? So you have to understand the relationship between deep time and old universe and an old Earth to the theory of evolution and Charles Lyell being the product of the Enlightenment. The Big Bang is a partial birth child of materialistic deep time and evolutionary thinking. So the Big Bang is just a modern iteration of the positivists. We will only accept purely mechanistic and materialistic explanations of the cosmos and of the solar systems.
Darth, do you know if, like, while logical or positivism was on its way up, do you know if there was, apologists or philosophers or scientists that were pushing back on it, or did it kind of just percolate through society undefeated?
There wasn't as many people in the field working at developing counter arguments for it.
Right.
Years ago, like well, yeah, because evolution, Darwin published the theory of evolution in 1869. It took many decades before it became pervasive, but it developed pretty quickly in terms of human history. And by that time, you're now into the beginning of the 20th century.
Right.
So by the time when the discovery of DNA occurred in 1952, okay, the theory of evolution was already dogma.
Right.
Okay. And so by this time, because the theory of evolution was dogma, it went to many scientists. And by the way, there's a difference between positivists versus the logical positivists. Okay?
What's
They're
that?
not the positivists were people within the either late 18th or into the 19th century that said we will only accept explanations for phenomenon, including the nature of past events in the distant past, that are only materialistic or mechanistic in basis, which means it's an a priori denial and rejection that the biblical record is of divine revelation. So what they did was they replaced one concept of God explaining the past with another concept where the mind of man is God, and through his pure reason and induction can figure out the distant past where he wasn't, to the exclusion or even the possibility of the divine mind. Okay, so now the mind of man is supreme over everything to explain everything, including the past where nobody was there to observe it.
So what's a logical positivist then?
The logical positivists were philosophical wonks who tended to be atheists in the early part of the 20th century, who said, and the logical positivist was an extension of positivism, where logical positivists said the only things that are meaningful or to consider to be true are those things that we can verify by our senses. Okay? So they're very closely related, but they're not precisely the same thing.
Gotcha.
But the positivists were the forerunners of the logical positivists.
So the logical positive may be more abstract, and what?
The logical positivist is what you have when you have positivism coming in and totally in an a priori fashion rejecting a biblical model and saying, no, the mind of man is to be reckoned to be supreme and the final authority as explaining past events where nobody was.
Interesting.
Okay. They didn't demonstrate that scientifically, right? How do they demonstrate that the mind of man to the exclusion of possible divine revelation, right?
Right.
So they just exalted the mind of man as the final authority.
Yep.
Why? Because man says so, right? And so now we're in this atheistic realm. Atheism isn't just explicit, it's implicit. So the Big Bang itself is a logical permutation of Darwinism applied to the cosmos. And so much so, it's repeated so much in schools and in documentaries that your average person actually thinks that the Big Bang is a discovery and a fact, when it's just simply a mechanistic, materialistic model with an a priori denial of a biblical worldview, for which they couldn't rationally justify that denial.
Right.
And it's such a genius satanic deception that even certain professing Christians are duped by this, like William Lane Craig. Right? Craig has built his reputation on using the Big Bang as a defense for God's existence. Well, we just came out with a scholarly paper, not we, but there's been a scholarly paper that just came out that is scientifically calling into question the nature of the interpretation of the so-called redshift of the background radiation of the cosmos, saying that it may not be what they're conjecturing it to be, that it could be an illusion of the way we're interpreting it. You see, this is what happens. Let me just say this. This is what happens when science goes to people's heads, where we exalt human reason above all things. So, for example, David Tong, who gave a lecture on physics in the lecture hall in England where Michael Faraday did his experiments, and he gave a lay presentation about the nature of physics, and he gets done with his brilliant explanation of physics, He says, the current state of the art when it comes to science is physics. We believe that what underlies all particles are different types of fields, okay, that result in particle formation. He then says this to the audience, and when he said it, my jaw dropped open. He said, but we could be entirely wrong if we're looking at it from a wrong perspective.
And wow. Isn't that interesting how delicate it is?
Right. And what's so nice and refreshing is that he's admitting the very truth about scientific models. Just because scientific models may provide us with very accurate predictions is not a guarantee that the models are true and correct. And in fact, when it comes to quantum mechanics and Einstein's relativity, they conflict with each other. They can't both be true. Okay? But yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying I could see when God created everything that there was just a huge explosion when he spoke things into beginning. What are your thoughts on that?
Explosion?
Well, I mean, that might be lack of a better term, but...
Well, in the Psalms, it says God stretched the heavens out. There's a big difference between stretching things out versus an explosion.
I mean, but I guess there's objects moving apart from one another in a sense. I mean, I don't know how it all happens.
That is also a model, which may or may not be true.
Sure.
Let me explain something to you, okay? If I tell you, suppose we're neighbors, right? And you call me up, and let's say we're going to go somewhere, and there was a report that there's a possibility of a snowstorm, and you call me up, and you just woke up, and you go, what's the deal? What's the weather outside? And I look out the window, and I tell you, there's 5 inches of snow on the road. Okay? You're like, oh, okay, right. Do you understand that when I am speaking to you, I'm giving you a model? If I tell you the sun rises and the sun sets, that's a model. It may be an idiom, okay? Everything in science and in life is an expression of our mind is modeling that and then verbally recapitulating the model in our minds that we think is accurate to the external physical world. And people seem to forget this.
Yeah.
That's not to say that we should just doubt models at any time. But the point is, we must never forget that these are all various layers of interconnected and interrelated models. And look, when I talk with people on a regular basis on the interweb, right, they speak of the Big Bang as some holy artifact, right? That it's a discovery. When I was listening to Leonard Susskind, a brilliant physicist, he happens to be an atheist, he referred to the Big Bang properly. He says it's just the current popular model, right? Because he understands probably better than the average person the fundamental nature of scientific investigation. These are all models. Like, for example, just ask somebody, is the periodic table, in terms of its representation of elements, right, is this a model? Right? They're going to think that this is a fact. Now, I personally believe that this model is correct, but it's still a model. Okay? And so what happens is certain models spread pervasively and is held in consensus, and then they're glorified and worshipped as though they're oracles of God.
Right.